Good day, everyone. I'm Xanda Hilger, and I coordinate the North Central Texas Caregiver Teleconnection through my relationship with the Area Agency on Aging of North Central Texas and the Dallas Area Agency on Aging. I will be monitoring the chats as we go through our program today, and we may save most of those for the end. This is being recorded and it will be available on YouTube within a couple of days should you want to review it again or share it with someone else that you think could benefit from it. This particular topic is so important in terms of long-term care, and we have a real expert today. How to choose, making the best long-term care decision for yourself and your loved one. Our speaker today is Suzanna Sulfstede. Correct that if I'm wrong.
It's close, Sulfstede.
You're probably like me. I have a name that's hard for people to grasp. And all right, she has served as the Director of Long-Term Care Ombudsman Programs at the Senior Source and the Managing Local Ombudsman for the Dallas County Program for 19 years. Prior to this, she served as the Director of an Intergenerational Volunteer Program at the Senior Source and as a nursing home social worker. Suzanna received her BA in psychology from the University of Arkansas, Fayetteville, and her master's in social work from the University of Texas in Arlington. She is licensed by the state of Texas as a licensed master social worker. Suzanna is widely recognized and highly recommended, by the way, as an expert in this field uh, and was previously appointed by the governor to serve on a nursing facility advisory committee, which advised the Texas Health and Human Services Commission on issues related to nursing facilities and Medicaid managed care. She has also served on multiple statewide work groups and most recently participated in one which was tasked with reviewing and commenting on draft state rules about the Ombudsman program. Suzanna advocates for the quality of life and care for the frail, elderly, and disabled residents in Tarrant County Nursing Home or Dallas County nursing homes and assisted living facilities. So as you can see, highly qualified, and she came very highly recommended. So Suzanna, thank you for taking time out of what I know is a busy schedule for you, and turn it over to you.
All right. Well, thank you, Xanda. Can y'all see my slides?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, good morning or good afternoon to all of you, depending on where you are. I'm so thrilled to have this time and this opportunity to talk with you about long-term care. And I want to thank Xanda for inviting me to be with you today. During our time together, I will be providing information about the different types or levels of long-term care. And I'll also share some tips for navigating that process of choosing a facility for a loved one. That can be an especially overwhelming process. And so my goal today is just to give you as much information as possible to help make that a little bit easier for you. Before I get started with that, though, I did want to just give a very brief overview of the Senior Source, which is the nonprofit organization where my program's housed. And then I'll talk some about long-term care ombudsman, and just so that you know who we are and how we can be a resource if and when you enter the world of long-term care. So the Senior Source has been making older better since 1961, and our mission is to improve the quality of life for older adults living in the greater Dallas area. And we accomplish that by providing a one-stop shop of comprehensive services for older adults and their caregivers. And those services are offered by staff who have a wealth of knowledge and experience in the aging field. Through our efforts, not only are we working to help people where they are in the moment, but we're also helping to anticipate potential needs so that they can plan accordingly for their future. So when we talk about improving the life of older adults, what does that mean? So we are serving financially insecure older adults, both in Dallas and Collin counties, by offering financial assistance, frauds and scam help, and then employment services through our Elder Financial Safety Center. We're also working with family caregivers of older adults, again, both in Dallas and Collin counties, by supporting those family caregivers in our caregiver support program. And then finally, we work with socially isolated older adults by providing nursing home and assisted living resources through the program that I work with, and then also volunteer opportunities through our AmeriCorps Senior Volunteer Program. And so last fiscal year, we were able to serve 23,000 individuals through these programs. So I often get funny looks when I tell people that I'm an ombudsman. It is not the easiest word, but simply put, it is a Scandinavian word that means advocate. The long-term care ombudsman program is both state and federally mandated to advocate for the quality of life and care for individuals living in nursing homes and assisted living facilities. Ombudsmen work to protect the health, safety, welfare, and rights of these individuals by making regular, unannounced visits to each of the facilities where we go room to room, talking with the residents about their care and working to identify and resolve complaints on their behalf. We address complaints that affect individual residents as well as those that may impact multiple residents throughout a facility. Ombudsmen are independent, and so that means we don't work for the facilities or anyone other than the resident, and our services are confidential and free of charge. We are resident-directed advocates, and so what that means is that we must have a resident's consent before we take any action to address a complaint on their behalf. Certainly, we have residents who maybe are no longer able to direct what their wishes are. Maybe they are in the later stages of dementia. And so in those situations, we will work with a power of attorney or a guardian if there is one in place. And then in situations where they don't have anybody, then we're going to act based off of what we think is in the resident's best interests. In addition to our complaint work, we also provide quite a bit of education to residents and facility staff on topics such as residents' rights and abuse and neglect. And then we also provide policy recommendations to governmental agencies and elected officials. And so an example of that, of an area that we've been especially focused on recently, is advocating at the federal level for a rule implementing a minimum staffing standard or staffing ratio for our nursing facilities. And then ombudsmen are a resource for people in the community who are trying to navigate that overwhelming process of choosing a facility for a loved one. We are not able to recommend facilities, but we can help narrow the list of options based on an individual's needs. And then we'll provide information such as common complaints that we address at those facilities. We can also help people access the state's most recent licensing inspection and help interpret information about any deficiencies that the facility may have received. And then we have materials that we'll either email or mail to individuals that have questions to ask, things to consider as you're looking at facilities. And again, our goal really is to just give people as much information as possible to help them make the best choice for their loved one. So locally, again, my program that I work with is housed in Dallas County and at an agency called the Senior Source, and we are responsible for serving more than 14,000 individuals living in the 79 nursing homes and 197 assisted living facilities in Dallas County. Currently, we have 9 staff and 13 certified volunteer ombudsmen who are helping us in this effort. As I mentioned at the beginning, we are a federally mandated program. And so that means that every nursing home, every assisted living in the country is served by an ombudsman program. And so if any of you need help connecting with an ombudsman in your local area, we can help get you connected with the appropriate program. And I actually do have, for those of you here in Texas, I do have a phone number at the end of my PowerPoint of how to reach people outside of our state or outside of Dallas County. And then one final piece of our program that is unique to the Ombudsman program at the Senior Source is our Friendly Visitor Project, which plays a critical role in improving the quality of life for individuals living in our Dallas County facilities. We know that at least half of the residents living in facilities never have visitors. They basically have been placed in these facilities and then forgotten. And so that's where our friendly visitors come in. Friendly visitors are individual and group volunteers that go in and get matched one-on-one to visit with residents. They help with activities, do donation drives, all with the goal of really helping to decrease that loneliness and social isolation that so many residents experience. Since COVID, we've actually evolved this part of our program into more of a hybrid opportunity. And so we have volunteers that are visiting in person, but we also do offer remote opportunities as well, where remote volunteers can send notes of encouragement or donations of craft items or snacks to residents in these facilities. Last year, we connected more than 2,400 in-person and remote friendly visitors with residents in our facilities. And we're just really proud of the work that we're able to do, again, just helping to decrease that social isolation that so many of them experience. So that's just some of the work that we do in our program. But at this time, I am going to transition just to talking about long-term care and what those different options look like. So I know a lot of us probably don't want to think about long-term care, but it is so important that you know what the options are and where to go for information, because 70% of older adults will need some type of long-term care at some point, whether that is a short-term rehabilitation stay following a hospitalization, or it's assisted living care, or it truly is somebody who needs that long-term care in a nursing home. Chances are you or someone that you love will need this information at some point. So when it comes to long-term care, there are a lot of different options. Senior living comes in many different shapes and sizes, and there is no universal setting or approach to care that works for everyone. And so that really does make doing your research so important so that you can find the right option for your loved one. So what exactly are those options? I'm going to be talking very briefly about independent living, even though it technically is not long-term care, but the other options are going to be assisted living, skilled nursing facilities or nursing homes. We use those terms interchangeably, and then continuing care, retirement communities. And so I'll take a little time to describe each of these, just so that you have an understanding of the different levels of service and types of care that each provides. So like I mentioned, independent living technically is not considered long-term care, but it is an alternative living arrangement for older adults. And I will say I do get calls about independent living communities in my program, and I think sometimes there is some confusion about what is provided in those settings. And so I did want to just touch on that very briefly. You may hear it also referred to as a retirement community or active 55 plus community, but basically independent living is primarily an apartment-like setting geared towards seniors. It's designed for individuals who are still active, independent, able to care for themselves, but they really just don't want the responsibilities of home ownership any longer. Typically, there's going to be a minimum age requirement. Usually it's going to be 55 or older, but that's going to be set by each community. And then a lot of times, in addition to that housing piece, there will be some additional services that may be offered. They may offer meals, social activities, transportation, but that really does vary from community to community. And usually there's going to be an extra charge for those services. In terms of the monthly rent, it can vary anywhere from about $900 a month for low income senior housing, all the way up to $5,000 a month. So again, it's really important to ask questions as you're looking at these communities so that you know what the charges are, and as well as any additional charges that there might be for those extra services. And it just is important to ask a lot of questions up front, really read through the paperwork, the admission paperwork that they might have you sign, just so that you have a good understanding of what's included in that monthly rent. And then finally, the last thing I want to point out about independent living is that they are not licensed or regulated by any state agency. They basically function like any other apartment-like or apartment complex in the community. And so there is not any type of state oversight with these independent living communities. They also are not going to be served by the Ombudsman program. All right, so assisted living, now we're really going to start talking about long-term care. Assisted living is the next step up. It is the fastest growing sector of senior housing, primarily because it is considered to be a lower cost alternative as well as a less restrictive setting compared to nursing homes. Assisted living is designed to provide personal care in a residential setting for individuals who need some help with their activities of daily living. So, bathing, dressing, medications, but they don't need 24-hour skilled nursing care the way an individual in a nursing home would. In addition to those personalized support services, assisted living is going to provide housekeeping, meals, laundry, transportation, as well as activities and social programs. And then assisted livings here in Texas are licensed and regulated by the Texas Health and Human Services Commission. They are served by the Ombudsman program. I understand that some of you may live outside of Texas. And so one thing I will say is that there is not a federal definition or a federal regulation for assisted living facilities. And so depending on where you live, assisted living may look a little bit different where you are, but what I'm sharing in terms of the licensure is specific here to Texas.
Susanna, may I ask a quick question
Of
related
course.
to that?
Yeah.
Um, that just to make the comment that ombudsman programs are in every state.
Yes. Yes, we are federally mandated, and how we operate is going to be consistent regardless of what state you are in, because there are federal laws that govern our program and federal regulations that we follow. So yes, we are in every state, and the information that I've shared about the Ombudsman program, as well as just the general information about the different types of long-term care, will be applicable regardless of where you live.
And I'm providing some links to
Awesome.
and some search
Okay.
suggestions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Xanda. I appreciate it. All right, so some key considerations or areas to know about and with assisted livings are going to be the licensure type, the setting, how they are staffed, and how to pay for one. So here in Texas, we actually do have two different types of assisted living, and the licensure is going to be based on the resident's ability to get themselves out of the building in an emergency, such as a fire, and then also whether or not they need help during the routine nighttime sleeping hours. It's important to know about the different types of assisted living because an individual might be appropriate for one type of assisted living, but not the other. And so that really is one way to help narrow that search and to help ensure that you're looking at the right type of facility for your loved one. So in a type A facility, those residents are still pretty independent. They may need some help with their medication management or their meal preparation, but otherwise they're still functioning pretty independently. And the license requirements state that an individual must be able to get themselves out of the building in an emergency without consistent or continuous assistance from staff. And then they also cannot require assistance during those nighttime sleeping hours. So an individual who maybe is incontinent at night and needs help getting cleaned up at night would not be appropriate for a type A facility. Or an individual who needs help transferring from the bed to a wheelchair or needs help with somebody helping to propel their wheelchair would not be appropriate for a type A facility. In our type B facilities, individuals do definitely have higher care needs. They can require that help getting out of the building. They can require that help at night. Here in Texas, we actually have quite a few type B facilities that are Alzheimer's certified. And so assisted living can be a viable option for an individual who has dementia, just depending on what their individual needs are. In terms of the environment, there's quite a bit of variance. Some of our assisted livings are what we consider to be small personal care homes. Basically, they look like any house driving by. You would not necessarily know that they are licensed to provide assisted living care. And in that setting, it's much more home-like setting, and a resident will have their own bedroom, may or may not have their own bath, depending on the home itself. And then they share all of the other common areas, so the dining area, the living room. But again, it feels a lot more home-like. And then in comparison, on the other end of this spectrum, we have much larger apartment-like settings where a resident has their own apartment with a bedroom, bathroom, maybe a small kitchenette, and then a living area. So again, that is one thing to take into consideration is what's going to be the most comfortable setting for your loved one. Some people really prefer that smaller home-like setting, whereas others want more privacy and more space. And so the apartment-like setting would be more appropriate for them. When it comes to staffing, you're not going to see as much staff in assisted living as you would compared to a nursing home. And certainly in our smaller assisted livings, it's not uncommon to have only one or two staff on duty, and especially at night. In these small facilities, staff typically are wearing multiple hats where you have the same caregiver who's helping the resident get up in the morning. They're preparing their meals, they're making their bed, doing their laundry. In our larger assisted livings, obviously, you will see more staff. A lot of times they will have more delineated roles. They may or may not have a nurse on duty or have one on call. It's not common to find one where you've got a nurse in the building 24/7. Assisted living is not considered a medical facility, and so they are not required to have a nurse on duty or on staff. And then when it comes to paying for assisted living, as I mentioned, it is considered to be a lower cost option. The average monthly cost here in the Dallas area is $5,241, but the costs do vary on the services that are provided and the individual's level of care. We do have a handful of homes here locally that charge in the 2000s, and then others that charge 12,000 or more a month. And so there really is that range. Um, for anybody who's needing an Alzheimer's certified facility, those are going to have typically a much higher monthly cost. On average, I would say that's closer to $7,000 to $8,000 a month. So when you're looking at assisted living, one thing it's important to do is to read that admission agreement. That is a contract between the resident and the facility, because it's going to spell out exactly what is included in that monthly rent. It's also going to let you know if the facility operates off of a level of care system. And so what that is they charge a base monthly rent, and then they may have 3 to 5 levels of care depending on how much care each resident needs. And so an individual could start out as a level 0 and they're just paying that monthly rent. But then maybe a little later on, they need more help eating. They need help being bathed. They need cues to walk down to the dining room. And so that starts triggering these different levels of care, which could then add on an additional 200 a month, 500 a month on top of that monthly rent. And so it's just important to read that admission agreement so that you know what's in the contract, you know what to expect with what those costs are going to be. And then options for payment are going to include private pay, long-term care insurance for those people who have planned ahead. And it is important to read the fine print because there's so many different policies out there. Veterans benefits can be an option, or here in Texas, a Medicaid waiver. Medicare itself will not pay for assisted living care. All right, so now we're going to move on to talking about our skilled nursing facilities or nursing homes. Again, we tend to use those terms interchangeably. While assisted living is going to be more of a residential setting, nursing homes are more of a medical setting, and they are designed for people who have more complex healthcare needs that they're no longer able to care for themselves. Nursing homes provide 24-hour skilled nursing care as well as meals, activities, and then help with dressing, bathing, medications, going to the bathroom. Residents typically need help in at least 2 of those areas, but we certainly have nursing home residents who are completely dependent on the staff for all of their care. In addition, nursing homes are going to have staff on site who provide physical, occupational, and speech therapy. For many individuals, it is a permanent move. That is, they're moving into the nursing home, and that is where they're going to spend the remainder of their days. But others may go in for a short-term rehabilitation stay. Maybe they've fallen and broken a hip, or they've had a serious illness and they're just needing to get their strength back. And so they may go from the hospital to the nursing home for a short period of time before returning to their home in the community. And then still others may be there for a respite stay. So they live with a family member, but that family member needs a break. And so they'll come into the nursing home for a short period of time, maybe 30 days, and then they'll go back home with their loved one. Like assisted living, our nursing homes are licensed and regulated by the Texas Health and Human Services Commission. There are federal regulations governing nursing homes, and so nursing homes across the country should be operating pretty consistently based on those regulations, and they are all served by an ombudsman program. So some key areas to know about with our nursing homes are the setting, again, how they're staffed, and then how to pay for them. In terms of the setting, I think our nursing homes traditionally have had a hospital-like setting. They have felt more institutional with that central nurses station and the long hallways stretching from that. But thankfully, we are starting to see some changes from that as new buildings are being built and our older facilities maybe are being renovated. But what I always try to caution people about with the environment is to be mindful of the chandelier effect. Just because a building is new, it's pretty, does not necessarily mean good care. Over the years, I have seen as new facilities have opened, it takes them a while to kind of work through some issues and figure out what the right staffing levels are like. And we actually do get quite a few complaints about brand new facilities. And so again, just keep that in mind. I think when you're looking at facilities, what you want to pay attention with the environment is, are there odors? Are there stains on the wall? Does it look like it's in disrepair? That's going to tell you more about what life looks like in that facility rather than something just being just brand new. So just keeping that in mind. In terms of staffing, definitely more staff in nursing homes. They are required to have one licensed nurse for every 20 residents in a 24-hour period. There is a minimum staffing standard or ratio that has been set at the federal level, but it has not been implemented yet. It's actually at risk of being reversed. And so an important question to ask as you look at facilities is, how many residents are assigned to each nurse and each nursing aide? Also, will the same aides be consistently assigned to your loved one each shift? That is considered a best practice in resident care. And again, can tell you a lot about what your experience is going to be like in that facility. And then in terms of paying for it, some nursing homes are going to be private pay. Others are certified for Medicaid, which is going to be a state benefit to help individuals who fall below a certain income and asset level. Here in Texas, the average monthly cost for nursing home care ranges from $5,700 a month for a semi-private room up to $7,200 a month for a private room. But again, we have nursing homes that are charging $13,000 or more a month. So again, some good questions to be asking as you look at facilities. And then the payment options are going to be private pay, long-term care insurance. Again, you want to read the fine print on the policy, and then Medicaid. And Medicare will help pay for that short-term rehabilitation stay. It's not going to help it won't be an option to help pay for long-term stay. And then finally, we have continuing care retirement communities, or CCRCs, and they offer independent living, assisted living, skilled nursing, and memory care all within the same campus or community. And I think the chief benefit of these CCRCs is that they provide that wide range of care and services all within one place, offering residents a sense of stability and familiarity as their care needs change. I think they also do offer a benefit to couples when they have different needs. So you could have one spouse who maybe is still really independent and is able to go in at the independent living level, and then the other spouse has dementia, it's advancing, and they need a secured unit. And so maybe they need to live in memory care, but the benefit of it is that they're on the same campus, which makes it easier for them to be able to see each other and spend time with each other. With the CCRCs, one thing that's important to know is that for those individuals who enter at the independent living level, some CCRCs charge a buy-in fee. So there may be an upfront fee that could be $200,000, $300,000. Now, a lot of times, at least a portion of that is refundable to the individual or their estate when they leave. But it is important to know that that could be something that's charged. Now, here locally in Dallas County, some of our CCRCs have moved away from that system and are just operating off of the monthly rental basis. But again, another good question to ask. All right, so that gives you an overview of the different levels of long-term care, the different options that are available. I did want to talk a little bit about conducting that search because really is never too early to start doing research and making plans. Placing a loved one in a long-term care facilities is one of the hardest decisions a family member will ever face, just with the emotion that's involved. A lot of times there's feelings of guilt involved with it. And so just doing that research and as early as possible can help make that process a little bit easier. The more you can plan ahead, the more you can involve your loved one in the decision and get their input, the easier that process and that decision will be if and when the need for long-term care arises. So as you start your search, talk to people. Obviously, the most important person to talk with is that prospective resident to the extent that he or she is able to make their wishes known. Talk with their physician. The doctor will be able to help you know when it's the right time for long-term care and also what level of care is going to be the most appropriate for the individual. Poll your friends, your neighbors, people at church. Ask them about their experience with different long-term care facilities, and then call the Ombudsman program. Whether you're here locally, call us at the senior source, or if you're outside of our area, we can get you connected with the appropriate program. Because, like I said, we've got materials that we can provide to you just to help guide that search with questions to ask, things to be taking into consideration as you're looking at facilities. And then before making that decision, you want to visit multiple facilities so that you have a comparison and you don't want to rely just on that initial tour. That first visit certainly is valuable. It allows you to gather basic information. It can help you narrow the list of options. But typically, one tour is not enough to the extent that you've got the luxury of having some time before making that decision. I really encourage people to visit more than once, maybe the first visit is during the weekday, and then you go again in the early evening or on the weekend because these facilities typically are staffed quite differently in the evening and on the weekend. A lot of times there's not a lot of administrative staff on site. And so that will help you have a better picture of really what life looks like in that facility if you can visit more than once. When you do those visits, you really want to engage your senses. Do you notice odors in the building? Do you hear call bells going off unanswered for an extended period of time? Do the residents appear well groomed? Are they engaged in the life of the facility? Or do you just see a row of residents in their wheelchairs lined up against the wall, maybe sleeping? Are staff interacting with them? You can learn a lot about a facility just through your own observations. While you're there, talk with the residents. And if you see family members, talk with them, ask them about their experience with that facility. And then I think another thing that's important to take into consideration is the location. Is it close to family to make it easier for family to get there to check on the resident? And then another plug for my program, as you're narrowing that search, reach out to the Ombudsman again. As I mentioned earlier, we can talk about common complaints that we've addressed at the facilities that you're considering. We'll also help you find and interpret information from state inspection reports, any deficiencies that the facility may have received. When reviewing those reports, you want to pay particular attention to any deficiencies that they receive related to infection control, as well as substandard care or abuse and neglect. Those are the key areas that you really want to hone in on. And then if you like to do that research yourself, I am providing links to some websites that you can go to. That first one is for Medicare.gov, their Care Compare website. What I do want to point out is they only have information about nursing homes because, again, there's no federal definition or regulations for assisted living. They have a 5-star rating system on their website, and I always tell people to take that rating with a grain of salt because a lot of the information that goes into that rating is self-reported by the facility. And so I don't find the rating itself to be as helpful, but what is helpful is their most recent licensing inspection. This website provides a lot of detailed information about what those inspectors saw when they were in the facility that led them to citing the deficiency. It also will note on there by the facility name if they've been cited for abuse or neglect in the past 3 years. So again, really helpful information. The next website I listed is for those of you who are here in Texas. That's the Texas Health and Human Services Commission, which is the state agency that licenses and regulates nursing homes and assisted livings here in Texas. They will have inspection reports. They're not going to be as detailed as that Medicare website, but they do at least have some basic information, and they do have the information for the assisted livings, which can be helpful. Oops, sorry, one more. That final website is for the Consumer Voice. That is a national organization that educates the public on long-term care issues, and they serve as a voice for consumers in those settings. Their website has a wealth of information for residents, for family members, and it really is a go-to resource for us as ombudsmen. So I definitely encourage y'all to check that one out as well. And then finally, once your loved one is in a long-term care facility, there are some things that you can do to help improve the care that they receive. Most importantly is to visit and visit often. You want to encourage extended family, neighbors, people from church to get out there and visit your loved one. We know from our experience that residents who receive frequent visitors tend to receive better care because they've got those eyes and they're checking on them, and the staff know that people are in there checking on them. You'll want to comply with whatever the facility's requirements are in terms of if they're requiring masks, because that is still happening some, especially this time of year, just with the different illnesses that are out there. But beyond that, you should be allowed in to visit with your loved one. Next, you want to participate in the life of the facility, attend activities with your resident. If a family council exists at the facility, join it. That is a great way to get to know other family members. It can be a great source of support for you. In our facilities where we do have family councils, I have seen the different council members start to check on each other's loved ones. And so it's just another set of eyes looking at your loved one for you. And then you want to make it a priority to attend your loved one's care plan meetings. Those are held quarterly, and that is a federal regulation. So regardless of where the facility is, that is something they're required to do. But that just helps you stay informed on what the facility staff have identified as the needs of your loved one and the steps that they are taking to help ensure that those needs are being met. And then one final plug for the Ombudsman program, get to know the Ombudsman who is assigned to your loved one's facility. They are required to have our contact information posted. If you're here in Texas, Texas facilities are required to have our contact information on their website. So get to know who the Ombudsman is for your loved one's facility, because again, we are a resource. If you end up having concerns with your loved one's care, we're a resource to talk through that, strategize how to get those concerns addressed. And then if you need our help, then we're ready to step in and help getting those concerns addressed. And then you always have a right to file a complaint with the state regulatory agency. If you feel like you have worked with that facility and they're just not being responsive, that is always a resource for you as well. All right, well, we, again, definitely here to help any way we can from the very beginning when people are looking for long-term care all the way until you're in a facility. And so I've provided my contact information on this slide. If you're here in Texas and you need help finding an ombudsman in an area outside of Dallas County, that toll-free number at the bottom, you can call that. But certainly if you're in another state, I think Xanda has provided maybe some resources that you can go to look for your ombudsman in your state, but you're welcome to reach out to me if you need to. I do get inquiries from people for other parts of the country, and I'm happy to help you get connected with that person. So at this time, I will turn it over for questions.
Okay, I want to provide just pull
Oh, you want me to
refer
stop?
people to some of the information that I've put on the screen for call 211 in any community in the United States and ask about the Ombudsman program. I also gave you eldercareacl.gov, and that is a nationwide search engine, I guess, for anything that has to do with elder care and family caregiving. So I would encourage you to do that. Also, the area agencies on aging have services, again, they're state, federal mandated for everything from information about benefits counseling. Some of them actually coordinate the ombudsman programs for their areas, but the Area Agency on Aging, put those terms into your search engine plus your zip code, and you'll see those area agencies on aging pop up either for you, or if you're living a distance from your care receiver, that might be different. So there's lots of resources that are available. And again, these are federally funded programs. Now, each program is managed a little differently according to the state, or um, variables that are just differences, but the funds have to be provided. Suzanna, we have a couple of questions that came in early on. Is respite care within the person's home eligible for coverage in a long-term care insurance? I don't know if you can address that.
I do not have much information about long-term care insurance. I would say you probably would want to read the policy because there are so many long-term care insurance policies out there and they vary in terms of what they will and will not provide coverage for. So I would encourage you to read the policy itself.
Right. In general, long-term care insurance, after a period of time, like 90 days or whatever, then there is a dollar amount per day, and that is provided through that long-term care insurance. And the person holding the policy and the caregiver can decide how to use that. Another follow-up question with that, any tips for ensuring in advance that the long-term care policy we pay for annually remain viable if and when we need that insurance coverage? Again, that's a question to pose to your long-term care insurance policy, or even look online for your state. The experience over the last few years of long-term care insurance, it's been somewhat not very stable, because what the insurance companies are finding is that we are living longer, but yet very often there are a lot of needs. So some insurance companies have even exited the market. So that would be something to talk to an insurance company about. And also you might want to talk to an attorney about estate planning, and talk about sheltering assets or whatever in your state. But I don't think that this is probably a topic that we can address with a lot of um, experience and information, right, Susanna?
Yeah, that's really outside of my scope.
Yeah. But again, would encourage you. I don't even know how much the area agencies on aging would know about that, but I would suggest you start with your long-term care insurance company and pose the questions, excellent questions, by the way, but pose those questions to them. Other questions that Minerva asked, are pets permitted in any of the different facilities, Susanna?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the facility itself. I think we see pets more so in assisted living
Mm-hmm.
rather than in nursing homes. But an individual would need to check with the facility directly to see if they allow pets. And if they do, typically there's going to be an additional fee that the individual would be required to pay to have the pet there. But I mean, I've got residents who have cats. I have some who have dogs. And then we do see some pet therapy in our nursing homes where people are bringing in
Mm-hmm.
dogs for pet therapy as well.
Mm-hmm. So again, a lot of these are policies of the individual facilities. And how Susanna provided the definitions and the differences between all of the different types of facilities is definitely something to take a look at, because it can become very confusing. Other questions? Other terms that I've heard used for ombudsman is very often they are mediators. Would you agree that that can be their role?
That's a really good question. So I think we use some mediation skills when we're working
Hmm.
to get concerns addressed, but we are quite different from mediators
Hmm.
and that we really are resident directed.
Right.
I think of mediators as being impartial and working to bring both sides together
Hmm.
to a common
Hmm.
agreement. We're impartial as we are gathering facts and information about a
Right.
complaint that we've received. That after that point, we are definitely resident focused and resident
Hmm.
directed. And so we are a little bit different than mediators.
Right. You're not mediators, but you do some mediation in that you're gathering facts and then trying to um, ensure that the facility is not overlooking what you find out.
Yes.
Other questions that people may have. Does anybody have any questions about the resources? I would encourage you, I'm going to put into the chat our website that is funded by the Area Agency on Aging. It's federally funded, the Area Agency on Aging of North Central Texas and Dallas Area Agency on Aging. It is Family Caregivers Online, and I'm putting it into the chat. And it is a wealth of information, including links to what we've been talking about and caregivers. Family caregivers. Trying to do too many things. Ah. And as a matter of fact, our web manager is on the call today. Family Caregivers Online. Here we go. Someone has posed the question about familycaregiversonline.net. Go there and you will find direct links. We've got a very robust uh, list of directory of resources and a lot of these organizations. So we would encourage you to take advantage of that. We have education modules, many, many blogs. Okay, a question that has just come in, is it allowed to bring in a personal caregiver to the skilled nursing home?
Again, I think as with the other questions, that policy may vary from facility to facility, but I certainly do see some private caregivers in some of the facilities that I go to. Um, but again, that's a conversation you would want to have directly there at the facility to see what their policies are related to that.
It's definitely very common that you might see personal caregivers in assisted living or independent living. But skilled nursing homes, as Suzanna said, it's an individual, that would have to be a one-on-one conversation with an individual um, facility and might be a really good question as you're searching for a placement for a loved one.
Mhm.
Ruth has asked, how secure is the federal funding?
Hopefully secure. I don't really have a good answer for that. Right now, I mean, we are federally mandated under the Older Americans Act, and this is an essential service. And so I have not heard anything otherwise at this point
Right.
about the funding.
And much of this funding is also approved by through Congress. So there are a lot of working parts, but none of us have heard anything that would threaten that at this point. And then again, familycaregiversonline.net, you may find that a really excellent resource for you. I put in the chat that you would see a survey pop up on your screen, and it is on the screen now. It's very simple and straightforward. There are, I believe, 6 questions, and we'd appreciate your taking time to do that. That gives us some feedback about how effective this is. And also, number 8 is suggestions for future topics. And if you have any speakers that you would recommend. And we've had speakers from across the country. So um, thanks to technology, that is certainly not a problem. Susanna, I want to pose this question to you if you could. Could you perhaps summarize what are key points or key considerations when someone is working with an ombudsman, how valuable they can be, especially to a family member?
Yeah, so I think what's most important to know is that we are resident directed. We don't work for any of the facilities. I get that question a lot, but we are independent and we have very strict confidentiality and consent requirements. And so anytime you talk with an ombudsman, anything you tell us is confidential. We cannot go to the facility and have a conversation with them without consent. But we're there just to help ensure that residents' rights are protected, and we work really hard to get complaints resolved on the residents' behalf. And a lot of times we may be the only eyes and ears outside of any family coming in, checking on those residents.
Right. And I always have been so impressed that ombudsmen, if everybody caught that, they're volunteers. They go through rigorous training, right?
Mhm.
In order to fulfill their, um, now you have some staff,
Yes,
but
we do have paid staff, but we do also have certified volunteer ombudsman, and it's 36 hours of certification training plus 18 hours of ongoing training each year. But yeah, I don't think we could function as well as we do without our
Mhm,
volunteers. They play a very key role in the work that we're doing.
mhm. Any other questions that anyone has? Lots of information, lots of good information. Really appreciate what you've laid out on the slides, because, especially in terms of the definitions and all of the resources. And then referring people to our website or the websites that I gave you in that 211. Susanna, thank you so much again
Thank you
for
for
your
having me.
time and the knowledge and the expertise and really the heart. It takes a big heart to do this work. Someone who's really, you and your staff that are committed to the needs of older adults and the families, because the families are very often are on the front lines of all of this.
Absolutely. And we're here to help any way that we can. So thank you again, Xanda, for the opportunity to share the information.
Thank you. And if everyone would please finish their session survey, we would appreciate that. And I'm going to turn off the recording